The jungle was alive with the sounds of nature. Birds called to each other from the treetops. Insects hummed in the thick undergrowth, and somewhere in the distance, the river gurgled over rocks. Amid this symphony, a young tribal girl moved carefully along a narrow path, her small hands clutching a woven basket filled with firewood. The sun had barely risen, and the air was still cool and fresh, but her work had already begun. Every day was the same for her, yet every day carried its own little challenges. She lived in a small village deep within the jungle. Her family's hut was made from mud and thatch, simple and humble, but it was home. Her father hunted and occasionally traded for necessities, while her mother gathered herbs and prepared food from whatever the jungle offered. The girl, the eldest of 4 siblings, had responsibilities beyond her years. She carried water from the river, helped with cooking, looked after her younger brothers and sisters while their parents worked. Her life was hard, but she had learned to find small joys in the simplicity around her. On this morning, she noticed a sound that was unusual for the jungle. It was not a bird or the wind rustling the leaves. It was a faint groan, barely audible over the usual chorus of the forest. Curious and cautious, she followed the sound, pushing through dense shrubs until she found its source. There, lying near a thicket, was a man. He was not from her village. His clothes were torn and covered in dirt, and his face was pale with weakness. His arm was bent at an odd angle, and he seemed unable to move properly. Fear fluttered in her chest, but it was quickly replaced by concern. She had seen animals and even people hurt before, but helping strangers was risky. Still, something inside her told her she could not leave him. Slowly, she approached, speaking softly in the local tongue, asking if he was hurt, if he needed help. The man's eyes opened slightly, and he tried to nod. He did not speak, but the look of pain and gratitude in his eyes was enough. The girl thought quickly. She could not leave him there, and she could not call others to help without attracting dangerous attention. So she decided to hide him temporarily in a small, covered space behind her hut. It was cramped and barely enough for one person, but it was dry and away from prying eyes. She gathered soft leaves and branches to make a makeshift bed, then helped him lie down gently. She could feel his body trembling from pain and cold. Her heart ached as she realized he might have been wandering the jungle for days, lost and alone. For the next few hours, she ran back and forth between her chores and caring for him. She brought water from the river in a small gourd, washed his wounds as best she could with boiled water, and applied a paste made from crushed herbs that her mother had taught her to use for healing. The man's breathing was shallow, and she feared he might not survive the night. Yet she stayed determined, talking to him softly, telling him stories of the jungle, of the birds, and the river. She did not know if he could understand, but her voice was comforting, and she hoped it eased his fear. As the sun climbed higher, the village came alive. Other children ran past her hut, playing and laughing, unaware of the life-and-death situation unfolding behind the walls. The girl stole moments when no one was watching to check on the stranger, making sure he was stable, feeding him small sips of water, and gently adjusting his position. She barely ate herself, fearing that if she left him alone for even a minute, something might happen. Night fell, and the jungle transformed. The sounds changed. Nocturnal creatures began their songs, and the darkness seemed heavier. The girl stayed awake beside him, using a small fire to keep the cold away. She whispered encouragements, sometimes telling him about the stars and the moon, trying to calm him. She felt a strange connection with him, a bond formed not through words, but through care and compassion. In a world where survival often meant thinking only of oneself, she had chosen to help another, someone she had never met. Days passed in this way. She learned a routine: gather food, fetch water, tend to her family's needs, and then return to care for the man. Slowly, he began to regain some strength. He could sit up with her support and even manage a weak smile when she spoke to him. He still did not reveal much about himself, and she did not press, respecting his silence. Yet she noticed small changes, the way his eyes followed her movements, the way he seemed calmer when she was near, and the subtle gestures that hinted at gratitude. During this time, she faced many challenges. The jungle was unpredictable, and she had to navigate dangers, wild animals, poisonous plants, and treacherous paths. She also had to hide the man's presence from the village elders, who would have been suspicious and possibly angry. Her courage and determination were tested every day, but she never wavered. Her kindness, she realized, had become stronger than her fear. The man began to observe her closely. He saw the tireless way she cared for her family, the gentleness in her interactions with younger children, and the unwavering spirit with which she faced life's difficulties. It was a stark contrast to his own life, filled with material wealth and constant expectations, yet lacking the purity and sincerity that she embodied. He had come to the jungle seeking something rare and valuable, but what he found was far more precious, a glimpse of a world guided by love, kindness, and resilience. One morning, as the sun painted the jungle in golden light, the girl noticed that the man could walk short distances with her support. He was still weak, but progress was evident. She felt a sense of pride and relief, knowing her efforts were making a real difference. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what life might be like if he were not alone. If he could survive the jungle and find safety, yet she also felt a pang of worry, knowing that the world beyond the jungle could be dangerous for someone unprepared for it. Despite the challenges, moments of joy and connection appeared. The man would laugh softly at her stories, and sometimes they would sit quietly by the river, listening to the water and the birds. Words were few, but they shared understanding through gestures and presence. It was in these moments that the girl realized the profound impact one act of kindness could have, not just on the one helped, but on the one giving help as well. As part one comes to a close, the jungle remains as alive as ever, and the girl's life continues in its difficult yet meaningful rhythm. She has faced fear, uncertainty, and danger. Yet her compassion has created a bond that neither of them fully understands yet. The man's survival depends on her, but in a way, she too is changed. She has discovered that courage and kindness are powerful forces, capable of transforming even the most desperate situations. The journey has only just begun, and the jungle holds many secrets yet to be revealed. But one truth is clear: the heart of a kind person can light even the darkest places. Days had passed since the girl had first found the stranger in the jungle. The sun rose and set, and the rhythm of her life had not changed much, except for one thing: the presence of the man whose life she had saved. She could see the improvement in his strength. He could now sit up without her support, and his voice, though weak, could sometimes be heard in short words or murmurs. But he still remained a mystery. He would never tell her where he came from, why he was alone in the jungle, or anything about the world beyond. He would only shake his head or offer a faint smile when she asked questions, leaving her to wonder. The girl, however, did not let the mystery disturb her. Instead, she focused on caring for him. Every morning, she would bring water from the river, wash his face, and comb his tangled hair with gentle fingers. She would talk to him about simple things, the way the birds sang, how the river flowed, and the small joys of jungle life. Sometimes she would tell him about the games she used to play with the other children, or about her family. And slowly, he began to respond with small nods, a faint smile, or a whispered word. Despite his silence, their days began to develop a rhythm. She would go to the forest to gather fruits, herbs, and firewood, and he would try to help, fetching light branches or arranging the small space where he rested. Though his movements were slow and awkward, the effort meant a lot to her. It was a silent form of communication, showing that he trusted her and wanted to participate in the life she had built around him. One morning, as the mist hung low over the jungle, the girl noticed something new. The man had managed to stand for a few minutes on his own. His legs wobbled, but he did not fall. She watched him carefully, fear mixed with pride, until he steadied himself against a tree. He looked at her, eyes filled with something she could not read, but a warmth radiated from him that made her heart beat faster. It was the first time she felt that perhaps he was beginning to trust her completely. As he gained strength, began to notice the details of her world. He watched how she prepared meals with care, using herbs and ingredients that were natural yet delicious. He noticed how she interacted with her family and the other villagers, offering help without expectation. These observations seemed to touch him deeply. He was a stranger in this remote place, used to a life of convenience and power. Yet he was learning from her simple but meaningful life. He began to see that there was a kind of wealth here that he had never experienced, a richness of heart and spirit. The girl, meanwhile, started noticing the little ways he tried to communicate beyond words. Sometimes he would point to an object or gesture in ways that made her understand his needs. Other times he would offer her a weak smile or a nod, and she could feel a silent connection growing between them. Though she could not explain it, she felt a sense of comfort knowing that she was not alone in this experience. He was sharing it with her, in his own quiet way. One afternoon, while gathering fruits near a clearing, she found that the man had managed to follow her a short distance. His steps were unsteady, but he persisted. She felt a mixture of surprise and concern, afraid he might fall or hurt himself again. Yet when she reached out and took his hand to steady him, she felt a strange thrill. It was the first time they had shared physical contact, and it was simple, yet it carried a weight neither of them could put into words. They walked together, hand in hand, through the dense jungle, learning trust in small, meaningful steps. Despite their growing connection, life in the jungle remained unforgiving. Food was scarce at times, and they often had to face sudden rains that turned paths into mud and rivers into dangerous currents. The girl had to remain vigilant, not just for herself, but for the man who was slowly regaining his strength. She carried him when needed, helped him cross streams, and even fought off small dangers like snakes or wild animals when they approached too closely. In these moments, the bond between them grew stronger, forged in trust, courage, and mutual dependence. Evenings were the quietest times. They would sit by a small fire near her hut, the flickering flames reflecting in their eyes. The girl would hum songs she had learned as a child, soft and gentle. Sometimes he would hum along in a low voice, the sound barely audible but profoundly moving. These shared moments became a ritual, a sanctuary where they could forget the hardships of the day and simply exist together. In these moments, the silence was not empty. It was full of understanding, of care, and of a growing affection neither dared to name. One day, while exploring the edge of the village, the girl came across a small stream where she had gone many times before. She saw him sitting by the water, trying to catch fish with his hands. He had managed to learn some basic skills, but his attempts were clumsy. She laughed softly, not to mock, but to encourage him. When he looked up and saw her smile, he returned a shy one of his own. It was a small moment, yet it was filled with joy and a sense of companionship that neither had known before. They were learning each other's world, one small experience at a time. The girl also started noticing that he was curious about the jungle in ways beyond survival. He would point at certain plants, ask questions through gestures, and watch how she interacted with the environment. Sometimes he would try to imitate her actions, carefully gathering leaves or making small tools. Though he was unfamiliar with this world, he wanted to understand it, to connect with her world, and through that, with her. His curiosity and willingness to learn impressed her. It made her realize that even though he was a stranger, he was trying to be part of her life in his own way. However, their growing bond was not without worry. The girl knew that keeping him hidden was dangerous. Villagers might notice his absence, and if they did, they would question her. She worried about their reaction, about whether they would understand or judge her for helping someone they did not know. Despite the fear, she continued, driven by a sense of duty and compassion. Her resolve strengthened with each passing day. She found herself becoming braver than she had ever imagined. The man, too, seemed aware of the risks, though he could not speak much. He would sometimes glance nervously toward the village or the jungle paths as if he sensed danger. He began to trust her judgment completely, allowing her to guide him and make decisions for his safety. Their roles had begun to blend. She was both caretaker and protector while he contributed in small ways, learning from her example. It was a delicate balance, one built on trust, care, and the quiet recognition that they were not alone anymore. As part 2 unfolds, their days became filled with shared experiences, small victories, and moments of quiet understanding. They learned from each other, growing stronger together in ways neither could have predicted. The girl's kindness had sparked a change in the stranger, and in turn, his presence was shaping her world in subtle, profound ways. Though mysteries remained about who he was and why he had come to the jungle, one truth had become clear. Their connection was real, meaningful, and slowly transforming both of their lives. The jungle, once just a place of survival, had become a space of trust, growth, the beginnings of a bond that neither could ignore. The days in the jungle continued in a rhythm that was both familiar and new. The girl had grown accustomed to the presence of the stranger, and he had grown stronger, more confident in moving through the dense forest that had once been so foreign to him. Their lives, though different in many ways, were now intertwined in small, meaningful acts that spoke louder than words ever could. Each morning, the girl would wake before the sun, carrying a small basket of fruits and herbs to the man who had become her companion. He would be waiting, seated on a large stone or leaning against a tree, trying to stretch his muscles and prepare for the day. She would smile at him softly, and he would respond with a quiet nod or a small smile, a gesture that had become their silent greeting. Together, they would venture into the jungle, gathering what they needed, avoiding dangers, and learning from one another. The girl began teaching him more than just survival skills. She showed him how to recognize the plants that could heal and those that could harm. She taught him the paths that led to safe water and the secret spots where fruits ripened first. He listened carefully, imitating her movements, and sometimes failing in amusing ways that made her laugh quietly. He, in turn, tried to teach her small things he knew from the world beyond the jungle. Though he did so slowly and carefully, perhaps not wanting to overwhelm her. Their lessons were simple, yet they carried a deeper meaning, a sharing of worlds, a meeting of experiences that had never collided before. Their bond was growing stronger, though neither dared to speak of it openly. There were moments when he would watch her with quiet admiration as she moved through the jungle, her hands deftly gathering plants, her eyes alert to every detail. He began to notice the way she treated her family, the gentle patience she displayed with her younger siblings, and the courage she showed in facing the daily challenges of life in the wild. It was a stark contrast to the life he had known, a life of ease and luxury, but often devoid of genuine connection. He found himself drawn to her spirit, her resilience, and her kindness. The girl, too, felt a shift within herself. She had always been aware of the hardships around her, but now with the stranger beside her, she discovered a new layer of understanding and curiosity. She began to wonder about the world he came from, a world so different from her own. She wanted to know why he had been alone in the jungle, why he had been hurt, and what he hoped to find in a place so wild and untamed. Her questions were gentle, careful, not pressing him too hard, but still revealing a desire to understand him more deeply. One afternoon, as they sat near a waterfall, he tried to draw in the dirt with a stick, showing her shapes she did not recognize. She watched, fascinated, and tried to mimic his drawings, laughing at her mistakes. In those moments, words were unnecessary. The joy of sharing, the simple pleasure of being together, was enough. She realized that he was beginning to trust her not just with his safety, but with his world, his thoughts, and perhaps even his heart. Life, however, remained unpredictable. The jungle was both a provider and a challenge. Sudden rains could flood paths, rivers could become dangerous, and wild animals were never far away. Each day required vigilance, and each challenge tested their teamwork. There were moments of fear, like the time a snake slithered close to them while gathering fruits, or when a sudden storm forced them to seek shelter under a large tree. In these moments, they relied on each other fully, and the trust between them deepened. The girl realized that courage was not just about facing danger alone, but about standing together, protecting and supporting one another. Evenings became their time for reflection and quiet companionship. They would sit by a small fire near her hut, the flickering flames casting shadows on the walls and the trees. She would tell him stories of her childhood, the playful moments and small adventures, and he would listen intently, occasionally nodding or offering a soft laugh. Sometimes he would try to tell her about his own experiences. Though his words were limited, she could sense the richness of his life beyond the jungle, even if she could not fully grasp it. The exchange of stories became a bridge between their worlds. connecting them in ways neither could have anticipated. The girl also began to notice small gestures from him that were tender and thoughtful. He would place a small fruit near her when she was too tired to gather it herself, or carefully adjust her mat while she rested. He seemed aware of her struggles and sought in his own quiet ways to ease them. It was a subtle form of care, but it spoke volumes about his growing affection and concern. She felt a warmth in her chest during these moments, a feeling that was new and both comforting and confusing. As they spent more time together, the girl started to imagine what life might be like if they could stay together. If the jungle could be a safe haven for both of them. She did not know what the future held, but she felt a sense of possibility that she had never known before. The man's presence was changing her perception of the world, showing her that kindness and trust could create connections that transcended fear and uncertainty. Despite these gentle moments, challenges persisted. The village remained cautious of outsiders, and the girl knew that discovery could bring questions, suspicion, or even danger. She had to carefully balance her responsibilities to her family and community with her growing commitment to the stranger. Each decision required thought, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown. Yet, she did not regret her choice. She knew that helping him had created something extraordinary, a bond that could not be broken easily. The stranger also struggled with his own thoughts and emotions. Though he rarely spoke of his past, the girl could sense a weight he carried, a longing for something lost or left behind. He was learning patience and humility in a world that demanded control and efficiency. Her presence, her unwavering kindness, was teaching him to see the beauty in simplicity, in human connection, and in the quiet moments that life offered. He was beginning to understand that strength was not only in wealth or power, but in compassion, trust, and shared experiences. One evening, under a sky full of stars, they sat by the river, watching the water reflect the twinkling lights above. The girl spoke softly about the constellations she had learned from her elders, pointing out shapes and telling their stories. He listened, captivated, and for the first time, he reached out to gently hold her hand. The gesture was small, but significant, a silent acknowledgement of trust, respect, and the unspoken feelings that had grown between them. The girl felt her heart race, a mix of excitement and uncertainty, realizing that their bond had moved beyond mere friendship. As part 3 comes to a close, the jungle remained alive around them, a world of beauty, danger, and opportunity. The girl and the stranger had found in each other a connection that defied explanation, quiet but profound understanding that strengthened with each shared day. They had learned from one another, laughed together, faced challenges side by side, and discovered the transformative power of kindness and trust. Though the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear: their lives were forever changed by the bond they had formed. And the jungle, once a place of survival alone, had become a place of growth, hope, and the beginnings of a love neither could ignore. Life in the jungle had taken on a rhythm, but with each passing day, the world outside their small refuge began to press in. The girl and the stranger had grown closer, their bond strengthened by shared experiences, trust, and quiet moments that spoke louder than words. Yet, the jungle was unpredictable, and even the safest places could hide danger. It began with whispers in the village. Some of the villagers had noticed strange footprints near the girl's hut. The remnants of firewood moved in unusual ways, and the occasional glimpse of a stranger moving through the trees. The elders, cautious and protective, began to question the girl. She would smile and shake her head, offering simple explanations about hunting trips or wandering animals. Still, suspicion lingered, and she could feel the weight of watchful eyes on her. Whenever she left her home or returned from the river, the girl knew that the stranger could not stay hidden forever. He was growing stronger, more curious, and more able to move through the jungle. She feared that someone might see him and cause trouble, either for him or for herself. Every decision became a careful calculation: when to gather food, when to venture into the forest, and when to return to her hut. She carried the responsibility of his safety as if it were her own life. The stranger, for his part, noticed the tension around them. Though he rarely spoke, he began to sense the fear and concern in her movements. in the way she would pause to look behind her or whisper warnings. He understood that his presence was a risk, but he also felt a growing urge to remain by her side. He had come to the jungle seeking something he could not yet name, and in the girl's care. He had found a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. One day, a group of villagers approached the girl while she was gathering herbs near the edge of the forest. Their expressions were wary, and they asked questions she could not fully answer. She tried to remain calm, explaining that she had seen signs of a stranger in the forest but did not know much. Her heart pounded as they pressed her, suspicion growing in their voices. The stranger, hidden nearby, watched silently, feeling the tension and realizing that discovery could come at any moment. He had learned to rely on her, but now he understood that the jungle, once a place of refuge, could become a trap. The girl returned to the hut with a heavy heart, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew they had to be more careful, that every action, every movement, could draw attention. She taught the stranger new ways to remain hidden, guiding him through narrow paths, dense undergrowth, and quiet areas where villagers rarely ventured. They practiced moving silently, avoiding detection, and blending into the natural world around them. The exercises were difficult, but they became a game of survival, a shared challenge that deepened their connection. Amid these challenges, their quiet moments together became even more precious. In the evenings, when the jungle fell silent and the stars reflected in the river, they would sit together, sharing stories and experiences. The stranger began to open up, revealing fragments of his past through gestures, expressions, and simple words. He told her about distant lands, bustling cities, and experiences she could barely imagine. She listened with wonder, her imagination painting vivid pictures of a world so different from her own. In turn, she shared the beauty of the jungle, the subtle patterns of the leaves, songs of the birds, and the wisdom of her elders. They were teaching each other, learning from each other, and in the process, understanding that trust and care could bridge worlds. Despite their growing closeness, the danger of discovery lingered. One afternoon, while gathering firewood, the girl noticed a group of villagers moving through the forest, their eyes sharp and searching. She signaled to the stranger to hide, guiding him behind thick foliage where he could remain unseen. Her heart raced as they watched the villagers pass, realizing that even small mistakes could bring disaster. The experience reinforced the seriousness of their situation and the importance of careful planning, vigilance, and patience. The stranger began to understand more about the girl's world, and the girl began to understand more about his. They communicated not just through words, but through gestures, glances, and shared experiences. A brush of a hand, a nod, or a quiet smile became meaningful, conveying care, concern, and a growing affection neither had fully acknowledged. Their connection was subtle, yet powerful, built on mutual trust and the recognition of shared challenges. One evening, a sudden storm struck the jungle. Rain poured in sheets, lightning flashed across the sky, and thunder shook the ground. The girl and the stranger sought shelter under a large tree, huddled together for warmth and safety. The storm tested their courage, their endurance, and their ability to rely on one another. The girl guided him through the tempest, shielding him from falling branches and mud, while he offered support when her strength faltered. The experience left them both exhausted, but strengthened. Their bond deepened by the trials they faced together as the days went by. The girl began to notice changes in herself. She felt a new sense of responsibility, not just for her family or her community, but for the stranger who had come into her life. She realized that her actions could shape the course of his survival. And in turn, his presence was shaping her understanding of courage, kindness, and connection. She began to see the jungle not just as a place of survival, but as a space of learning, growth, and shared experience. The stranger, too, experienced a transformation. He had come to the jungle seeking something tangible, but he found something far more profound. The girl's unwavering kindness, her courage, and her resilience showed him a form of wealth he had never known. He began to question the life he had left behind, the world of material possessions, and the relationships that lacked depth and authenticity. In the jungle, he discovered the richness of the human heart, the value of trust, and the power of shared experience. However, the threat of discovery remained. The girl knew that the villagers' suspicion could erupt into confrontation at any time. She had to balance her growing affection and trust with caution, ensuring that neither she nor the stranger would be harmed. Every movement, every choice carried weight, and she carried that responsibility with quiet determination. In these moments of tension and uncertainty, their connection grew stronger. They had learned to rely on each other fully, to communicate through gestures, and to understand the unspoken needs and emotions of the other. The jungle had become a teacher, a challenge, and a sanctuary, shaping them both in profound ways. They were no longer simply two individuals navigating survival. They had become a team, bound by shared experience, mutual care, and a growing understanding of each other's world. As Part 4 comes to a close, the jungle remained both beautiful and treacherous. A reflection of the life the girl and the stranger were building together, they faced external threats, suspicion, and the unpredictability of the wild, yet they had found strength in their bond. The girl's courage and kindness had created a safe space for the stranger, while his presence had introduced her to a world beyond her own. The challenges they faced had not weakened them. They had strengthened their trust, deepened their connection, and shown them both that true companionship could thrive even in the most difficult circumstances. The jungle, once a place of mere survival, had become a landscape of growth, understanding, and the quiet beginnings of a love neither could ignore. Time in the jungle moved slowly but with purpose. The girl and the stranger had adapted to each other's presence so completely that the days felt both routine and extraordinary. Each morning, the girl would wake before sunrise, gathering food and water, while the stranger rested or prepared himself for the day. He had grown stronger, more confident, yet there was still an air of mystery around him. He would rarely speak of where he came from or what had brought him to the jungle, and she did not press, though curiosity often tugged at her mind. One day, as they were walking through a sunlit clearing, the stranger paused. He pointed toward the horizon, then gestured for her to sit. She watched him carefully, noticing the seriousness in his eyes. Slowly, he reached into a small bag he had kept hidden and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. He handed it to her. Confused but intrigued, she opened it and saw a map, detailed and precise, unlike anything she had seen before. It showed the jungle in intricate detail, with marked paths, symbols, and notes that hinted at knowledge beyond her imagination. Her heart raced. The stranger looked at her with eyes that were no longer just grateful or curious, but filled with a quiet intensity. He finally spoke softly in words that were measured and careful. He told her that he came from a distant city, a world she could barely imagine. He had been searching for a rare medicinal plant, one that could help countless people, but the jungle had been unforgiving, and he had been lost, injured, and alone when she found him. Her kindness had saved his life, and now he wished to repay her in ways that were more than just words. The girl listened intently, her mind struggling to comprehend this new world he described. Cities, wealth, and influence were concepts she had only heard of in passing from travelers. Yet, she felt the weight of his words and the sincerity behind them. He explained that he had seen something extraordinary in her courage, her resilience, her unwavering kindness. In the midst of the harsh jungle, she had shown him a form of strength he had never encountered. He wanted to ensure that her life and the lives of those in her village could be better, safer, and fuller, though he did not want to impose or overwhelm them. For the girl, the revelation was astonishing. She had always known the jungle as her world, a place of survival and struggle. But now she realized that her small acts of care had reached far beyond her understanding. Her heart swelled with pride and wonder, knowing that her choices had made a difference in someone's life in ways she had never imagined. She also felt a new sense of responsibility. She had to consider how this knowledge and his presence would affect her family and her community. Over the following days, the stranger began to show her small ways he could help. He revealed simple tools and objects from his world, things that could make their daily lives easier: containers for water, small utensils for cooking, and seeds for planting new crops. The girl marveled at these gifts. Understanding that they were more than mere objects, they were symbols of trust, care, and a desire to improve life in the jungle without disrupting the balance she knew so well. Their relationship deepened in these moments of shared discovery. The girl began to see him not just as a stranger or someone in need, but as a companion, someone who had chosen to be with her and who valued her wisdom and courage. They continued to explore the jungle together, but now with a new purpose: learning from each other, teaching each other, and building a small world where both could thrive. The act of survival had transformed into a collaboration, one filled with understanding, respect, and a quiet, growing affection. One afternoon, as they rested by the river, he gestured for her to sit closer. She obeyed, and for the first time, he tried to communicate in a way that went beyond gestures. He spoke softly about his hopes for the future, about the changes he wished to bring to the jungle community, and about the importance of her guidance and knowledge. She realized that he trusted her not only with his life, but also with his vision for the world, and this trust was profound. She felt a sense of importance and purpose that she had never experienced before. The girl also began to notice subtle changes in herself. She felt a new confidence, a growing sense of empowerment, and a realization that her actions mattered in ways she had not fully understood. The stranger's presence had expanded her world, introducing her to ideas, hopes, and possibilities that were previously unimaginable. Yet, she remained grounded, understanding that her strength and wisdom were deeply rooted in the jungle. In the life she had always known, challenges persisted. The village remained wary of outsiders, and she knew that their suspicion could erupt at any moment. She had to continue her careful balance of responsibility, trust, and secrecy. Each day required vigilance, not just for their physical safety, but for the fragile trust they were building. The stranger learned to move carefully, to respect the rhythms of her world, and to rely on her judgment and guidance. Their collaboration had become a delicate dance, requiring patience, attentiveness, and mutual understanding. Yet amid these challenges, there were moments of joy and discovery. They would explore hidden groves, discover new plants, and share quiet laughter at the stranger's clumsy attempts to imitate her movements. These small moments were powerful, creating memories and a sense of intimacy that neither could ignore. Their connection was not rushed or forced. It grew naturally, nurtured by care, shared experience, and the understanding that they were shaping a life together. Even in the wild, one evening under the glow of the moon, they sat on a rock overlooking the river. The girl shared stories of her childhood, of playful adventures, and quiet moments by the water. The stranger listened, captivated, occasionally contributing small details of his own life that revealed glimpses of the world beyond. She realized that he was teaching her as much as she was teaching him, and that the exchange of knowledge and experience was strengthening their bond in ways that were both practical and deeply emotional. In these quiet hours, the girl began to feel emotions she had never encountered before. There was admiration, gratitude, and a gentle affection that warmed her heart. She understood that her life had been touched in a profound way by this stranger, and that their connection was more than circumstance. It was meaningful, deliberate, and real. The stranger, too, showed signs of emotion that were subtle but undeniable: protective gestures, quiet attention to her needs, and an unspoken desire to remain near her. The days continued with this rhythm of discovery, challenge, and quiet intimacy. They learned to navigate the jungle together, to support each other, and to face difficulties with courage and patience. The stranger's knowledge brought new opportunities, and the girl's wisdom and strength kept them grounded. Their relationship was evolving, deepening with each shared experience, and creating a foundation that neither could have built alone. As Part 5 concludes, the jungle had become more than a place of survival. It was now a landscape of learning, trust, and the beginnings of transformation. The girl had discovered her own strength and influence, while the stranger had found guidance, care, and a sense of belonging he had never known. Together, they were creating a life that blended their worlds, proving that kindness, trust, and shared experience could transform even the most challenging circumstances into a path of hope, growth, and connection. The stage was set for the next chapter, where deeper truths, emotional revelations, and the possibility of love would begin to unfold fully, shaping the destiny of both the girl and the stranger in ways that would change their lives forever. The jungle had become a place of lessons, challenges, and quiet miracles. The girl and the stranger had spent countless days together, learning from one another, sharing moments of joy and struggle, and building a bond that neither could deny. They had faced dangers, navigated suspicion, and grown in ways that went beyond survival. Now, as Part 6 begins, the culmination of their journey approached a moment where their connection, trust, and shared experiences would lead to transformation for both. Morning in the jungle arrived with the soft hum of life stirring among the trees. The girl rose early, her movements fluid and practiced, carrying water and preparing breakfast as she had done countless times before. The stranger, now strong enough to help with small tasks, joined her in the preparation. Together, they worked in silence, a rhythm that had become comforting. Each gesture, each shared glance, carried a sense of understanding and unspoken communication that spoke louder than words. In the following days, the stranger began to reveal more of his intentions. He wanted to help the girl's village, not through mere gifts or charity, but by creating opportunities and resources that could make a lasting difference. He showed her tools for farming, seeds for new crops, and small equipment that could ease the daily burden of gathering food and water. The girl marveled at these gifts, not just for their practicality, but for the thoughtfulness and care behind them. She could see that he had considered the impact carefully, respecting the village and its ways, rather than imposing his world upon it. Their explorations in the jungle took on new purpose. They searched for rare herbs and plants together, mapping them carefully, learning their properties, finding ways to use them for both survival and potential healing. Each discovery brought a sense of accomplishment and joy. The girl noticed how much he had changed, how his movements were more assured, his confidence growing, and his curiosity about the jungle blending seamlessly with his admiration for her skills and courage. Evenings became sacred. They would sit together by the river, the water reflecting the sky above, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet companionship. The stranger had begun to trust her completely, opening his heart in subtle ways, gentle touches, protective gestures, and moments of quiet reflection shared without words. The girl, in turn, allowed herself to feel emotions she had long kept hidden: admiration, gratitude, and a warmth that grew with every shared experience. She realized that her life had been changed profoundly by his presence, just as his had been changed by her kindness and courage. One day, as they worked to plant new seeds in a small clearing, the girl noticed that the stranger paused, looking at her with an intensity she had not seen before. He gestured for her to sit beside him and took a deep breath. Slowly he spoke, explaining that he wanted to do more than help the village. He wanted to be present, to share his life in a way that honored the trust and bond they had built. He spoke of admiration, respect, and a growing affection that he could no longer keep quiet. The girl listened, her heart swelling, feeling emotions that mirrored his own. She realized that the bond they had formed through survival, trust, and shared experiences had blossomed into something deeper. Unspoken love that had grown quietly but powerfully over time. The jungle, once merely a backdrop for survival, had become a sanctuary of connection, learning, and transformation. The girl and the stranger now saw it as a place that had shaped them, taught them the value of kindness, resilience, and trust, and allowed them to discover the depth of their own hearts. Their shared challenges had strengthened their bond, and the quiet moments of companionship had nurtured an understanding and an affection that transcended words. The girl began to notice the stranger's small acts of care in new ways. He would gather extra water for her, ensure she rested when needed, and offer protective gestures whenever danger seemed near. These actions, once simple, now carried profound meaning. They were expressions of love, respect, and commitment. She, too, responded with gestures of care, teaching him more about the jungle. guiding him through its challenges and sharing her world with patience and joy. Their lives had intertwined so completely that each action, each choice, was a reflection of mutual understanding and devotion. Word of the stranger's identity and intentions eventually reached a small circle of trusted villagers. They were cautious, but intrigued. Seeing the tangible improvements in daily life and the care with which the girl and the stranger approached their work, slowly, trust began to grow among the community. The girl had been right to follow her instincts, to protect him and nurture the bond they shared. Her courage had not only saved a life, but had opened the door to opportunities and improvements that benefited everyone. Together, they began to implement sustainable changes in the village. New planting methods improved harvests, tools eased daily labor, and clean water solutions enhanced health and hygiene. The stranger's knowledge, combined with the girl's intimate understanding of the jungle, created a partnership that was both practical and transformative. The villagers, once wary, now began to participate, learning from their collaboration and appreciating the care with which it was done. Through all of this, the girl and the stranger's relationship continued to deepen. They shared laughter, moments of quiet reflection, and small celebrations of their successes. They learned to communicate without words, understanding each other's needs, emotions, and desires through gestures, expressions, and shared experiences. The love between them, once unspoken and delicate, grew stronger. Rooted in mutual respect, admiration, and a profound understanding of one another's character as the sun set each evening, casting golden light across the jungle. They would sit together, hands brushing, eyes meeting, hearts full of emotions that words could scarcely capture. They had built something extraordinary in a place that was both wild and beautiful. Where challenges had forged resilience and kindness had created trust, the girl had discovered the depth of her own courage and compassion, while the stranger had found a world he had never known, a world of genuine connection, love, and meaning. In these final days, the bond between them was undeniable. The jungle, with all its beauty and danger, had served as the crucible in which their relationship was formed. Their journey had been one of survival, learning, and transformation, culminating in a connection that was deep, real, and lasting. The girl had shown the power of a single act of kindness, and the stranger had demonstrated that even in a world of wealth and influence, the heart could be transformed by genuine care and trust. The story of the girl and the stranger, once marked by uncertainty and danger, now became a tale of hope, love, and the enduring power of human connection. They had faced challenges, discovered each other's worlds, and built a life together that honored their pasts while embracing the future. The jungle, once a place of mere survival, had become a symbol of growth, partnership, and the quiet, profound impact of one act of kindness. Together, they moved forward, not just as survivor and rescued, but as partners, friends, and companions, bound by trust, affection, and the life-changing power of love discovered in the heart of the jungle.